So we're now recording. So welcome to the second Roses seminar, Reading Online Sport Economics Seminars, an opportunity for us to still interact with each other on a research front and interact more generally as well. It's really great that so many people are in the chat room. I've had lots of conversations with people, lots of emails, lots of interest, and it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for getting in touch. I'm delighted that you're all able to access this. I'm delighted that we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers for the first first five of these, second through the fifth of these Reading Online Sport Economics seminars. Today, Alex Krumer is going to present, and Felix Otto, one of his co-authors, is going to chair the session. One thing I want to say before we start is if you do want to take part in one of these, I've created a doodle poll. So if you want to do one of these talks in May or June, everyone's welcome. It doesn't really matter what stage your research is at. It doesn't matter whether you're one of the superstars of the field. We've got a number of the superstars of the field in the room. It's fantastic to see, but we've also got a lot of PhD students. I've been really pleased to see lots of PhD students getting in touch with me. If you're a PhD student and want to present your work, please get in touch. More than happy to have you present your work in the seminar series. There's a doodle poll, there's a link within the team. I will try and circulate that. If you're not sure, if you haven't seen it, let me know one way or another and I can share that with you. Please do get involved. So I don't want to spend too much longer. I'm not the main event this week. You don't get to hear my voice quite so much, thankfully for your sakes. But we've got Alex Krumer from Molde University College, who's going to present work co-authored with Felix Otto and Tim Pawlowski from the University of Tübingen. Nationalistic bias among international experts, evidence from professional ski jumping. I'm going to go on mute. I'm going to suggest everyone else goes on mute now and leaves just Felix and Alex off mute. And I'll let Alex take away the seminar. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Alex.
So, James, thank you very much for the very nice stage that you organized. This is really cool during these tough times. So, thank you very much. So let's start. As James said, this is a joint paper with Felix Otto and Tim Pawlowski, Nationalistic bias among international experts, evidence from professional ski jumping. And it's always nice that an Israeli guy speaks about ski jumping, biathlon, all those things that I can't even ski. But hey, this is a really nice data, so it's really nice to have some good research questions that we can answer with this data. But at some point, maybe I'll start to ski here in Molde, especially when there is snow now. Okay, so actually, unfortunately, in-group favoritism is something is very known, and unfortunately, it does not disappear. Especially these days when we have this coronavirus, this nationalism is becoming even stronger. But what is this? First of all, in-group favoritism is based on division of people into some groups. And there is some predefined rule that divides people into the groups. Now, and usually people prefer in-group members rather than out-of-group members. So there was a very nice paper in 2008 published in Science by Everson and their colleagues, and they showed that even different signs on shirts were enough to divide people into groups and create in-group favoritism. So actually what they did a very nice experiment. They draw some circles or triangles on shirts and told people, you just now divide yourself to groups. And people somehow, those with triangles came together with triangles, and those with circles came together with circles. Now, the point is that if there were people of circles, minority of people with circles in a group with triangles, there was discrimination against them, only because they had a different shirt. So this is a very strong feature of human feature, that we just prefer in-group members. Now, in sports-related data, there were several very nice papers. So First is Price and Wolfers in 2010 in QGE. So they found that NBA players have fewer fouls called against them when the race matches that of the refereeing crew. We will come back to that paper because there was a follow-up paper on that one. Now, Pop and Pop in 2015, they studied UEFA Champions League games, and they showed that referees favor their compatriot players by assigning them more beneficial fouls. Now, the point is that in Champions League, let's say there is a German team that plays against English team, and there is a Spanish referee. So if there are more Spanish players in an English team, then this Spanish referee favors this team. Now, in a very recent paper last year, me and my colleagues from the University of St. Gallen, Richard Faltings and Michael Lechner, we studied games in Swiss soccer, and we showed that the referees from one linguistic area assign significantly more yellow and red cards to teams from a different linguistic area. Because Switzerland is a nice case where we have we have 4 languages, but in Swiss football we have 3 languages, and that was really nice to test this thing. Okay. Now, and as I said, it is very likely that in-group favoritism is one of the more primitive human instincts. There was a very nice book in 1906 that speaks about it by a sociologist whose name is Sumner.
Alex, we've lost your screen. Can you share your screen?
My screen. Okay. So let's see what's going on. Share desktop, screen right. 1. Now we are okay, right?
Back. Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Perfect.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Now, so just move this one from here. Excellent. So, as I said, in-group favoritism is one of the more primitive human instincts that was developed during evolutionary process. Probably this is how we survived. We always wanted to help our family, our group, our city, our country, and this is still with us, and especially this crisis. And another very nice paper from last year. I don't even know how to pronounce this journal. They used CT machines and they tested brain activities of fans from 2 rival teams. I think it was Arsenal and Manchester United, if I'm not mistaken. And fans watched the same game. So the authors found correlation between supporters of the same team in brain activities in areas that are known to be active in self-identity. But these brain activities were significantly different between the 2 groups of fans. It's a nice study. Is that? Okay. Now, well, how can't we not talk about Corona? So I found a very nice newspaper title. It's not really nice, but several days ago, several European countries rejected the plea of 9 countries, including Italy, for pooled borrowing during coronavirus crisis. And then La Repubblica, they slammed La Brutta Europa, which means ugly Europe, over delayed economic plan. So they kind of blame Europeans that we have this solidarity, but when tough times arrive, we don't really have the solidarity, and this solidarity lost to this primitive favoritism, nationalism. So actually, we are not the first who look at ski jumping. We built on efforts of Eric Zitzewitz, who published in 2006 in Journal of Economic Management and Strategy. So he already found that judges assign a significantly larger number of the style points to their compatriot jumpers in professional ski jumping. Exactly the same research question. And by the way, why it's nice to look at ski jumping? Because I guess this is more or less the only sport when you can easily observe and to separate between objective performance, which is length of the jump, and subjective evaluation, which is style points. By the way, the same The same bias was also found in figure skating and in dressage competitions in several follow-up papers. So what are we doing? What is our aim? Our aim is to retest different nationalistic related biases. We have two nationalistic related biases that we will talk about. And we do it almost 15 years after Zizewicz finding. By the way, Zizewicz used only one season of data, 2002, and he published it in 2006. So how do we contribute? There was already a study, we already know the results. Why are we doing this? So we have four different contributions. First, well, awareness of the problem is an important thing, because this can be of a great value. Because if judges are aware of such a bias, they can do something to reduce it. And if you remember the paper in NBA where it was found that referees assigned significantly more fouls against basketball players from different race. So there was a follow-up paper by Pop and colleagues, and they published it in Management Science in 2018. So so what they found is that the racial bias disappeared after widespread media coverage. This is what they found. So if there is a negative widespread media coverage, the racial bias disappears. So our second contribution, actually we contribute to the growing debate about the importance of replication studies. And what motivated us was actually a study that was published in 2015 in Science. So what they took 100 experiments that were published in top academic journals in psychology, and they could only replicate 36 out of 100 studies. In addition, in economics literature, Ioannidis and Dokoliagos, they published a paper where they discussed that actually economists and business research, we don't really like to do. We don't have reproducibility culture in economics and business. So it seems that this is an important scientific task to try to replicate original findings. Our third contribution is that, well, judges may use strategic voting. What is strategic voting? For example, I'm Norwegian and there is a jumper from Austria. And there is also Austrian judge in the panel. So I'm saying there is Austrian judge in the panel. I will give higher score. I will assign a higher score to the Austrian jumper. And the Austrian judge will assign higher score to Norwegian one. This may make sense. But the evidence of such a strategic voting is very mixed. On the one hand, Zizewicz, who by the way called it compensating bias, he did not find that this is really happening. He found the other way around, that ski jumping judges assign significantly lower scores to jumpers of the same nationality. Okay, so if I'm a Norwegian judge and there is Austrian jumper and there is also Austrian judge in the panel, I will assign lower scores. There is some kind of, I like fairness. I don't like to be unfair. But on the other hand, the same Zizewicz in two papers, and also Sandberg in 2018 in the Economic Journal, they found an opposite result for figure skating and dressage judges, who assigned significantly higher scores to athletes whose compatriot presence in the judging panel. So actually, one paper finds negative bias, one paper finds positive bias. So we would like to shed additional light into this question. And our last contribution, it's purely sports economics related one. Athletes may benefit from the so-called home advantage, and in ski jumping, this is probably driven by familiarity with the facilities. And we are the first to show the crucial role of competing at home in ski jumping by estimating its contribution to jumpers' performance and judges' evaluation. Actually, no previous study has investigated home advantage in ski jumping on the level of single jump or single evaluation. So that's these are our contributions. Okay. So for those of you who is not familiar with ski jumping, I will show you a very short video of Jon Remen Evensen. Actually, this guy helped us with our study. He gave us some comments, and he was a world record holder. And this is actually his jump. This is how it works in ski jumping for those who is not familiar. So first they jump. There's an outrun. And he flies away for a long distance. Nice jump, 240 meters. Norwegians are very happy. And then, so there was a jump. And now we'll see how the scores are assigned. So you can see that there are 5 judges. They assign scores in intervals of 0.5. And the highest score, which was 19.5, and the lowest score, and by the way, here we have 19.5 and 19.0. We can have several 19.5s. And the Finnish judge was not very nice with Norwegians here, but these extreme votes are truncated. This is how it works in jumping. So again, just to summarize, athletes run down the track on their skiers to generate speed, then they jump. Usually there are 50 competitors jump in the first round, and based on the results of the first round, the top 30 advance for the second round. And the winner of competition is the jumper with the highest number of aggregate points, first round and second round together. Now, the aggregate point score is determined by the jumping distance and the style points. So you have to jump as far as possible and to make it in the nicest possible way with regard to your style. Now, the jumping distance actually is the objective performance. We can measure it. We can see that if the jump was 240 meters, it's 240 meters, but with intervals of half a meter. And this distance is converted to a point value. Now, also, as I said, 5 judges. 1 is always local, which is important. There is always home advantage, not only in terms of familiarity with facility, but also in terms of having a judge in the panel. So there is always a local one. They award style points for the execution of the jump, landing, whatever. Each judge awards a score between 0 to 20 with intervals of 0.5. As I said, lowest and highest are truncated. And the remaining 3 scores are summed up to the total style points. And there are also compensation points for the starting gate and wind conditions. So what's going on with the data? What we have is the data from all the World Cups, Nordic World Championships, and Olympic Games for the season between 2010-11 to 2016-17. Why did we choose to start from 2010? Because starting from 2010, in 2010-11 season, there was an introduction of the wind and gate compensation points. And we only focused on the first round of competition. Why is that? Because in the second round, jumpers are already asymmetric with regard to their interim ranking, and this may affect their performance. I don't know, momentum or disappointment, or they know that they have no chance to win, so they exert less effort, whatever. So the first round is the cleanest one from the experimental point of view. So our data set consists of 203 competitions, 14 countries, 190 unique athletes from 17 countries, and 172 unique judges from 19 countries. So some descriptive statistics. So we can see that single judges style points on average, if there is a compatriot jumper, the average score is 17.5 compared to 17.3 if there is a non-compatriot jumper. Now, total style points when, on the level of a jump, so it's about 87 compared to 86 in favor of the case where compatriot in the panel. When we truncate, the advantage still remains 52.3 compared to 52.0. On the other hand, well, there is not really a random allocation between compatriot and non-compatriots. So we can see that jumping distance of those who have compatriot judge in panel is this one. You can see 132 compared to 128. So we can guess, or this may suggest that actually jumpers who have compatriot judge in the panel, they may be on average better jumpers. Okay, and another thing is that home event is not equally distributed between cases where compatriot judge is in the panel and no compatriot judge in the panel. Okay, another thing, on the level of single jump, the within standard deviation is 0.3. This is important to understand because when we will talk about our coefficients, we will see, we will put it into perspective compared to standard deviation. So it's 0.3. Okay, so what did we do with regard to the estimation strategy? Obviously, a naive approach of correlating a dummy variable of having a compatriot judge in the panel with the style points will yield biased and obviously inconsistent estimates because the jumper's unobserved ability is likely to affect his performance and therefore the decision making of the judge. Okay, so I jump better, therefore I will get better scores, and by chance I have compatriot judge in the panel, so this correlation means absolutely nothing. So we need to take the different sources of unobserved heterogeneity into account, but since we follow the same jumpers and judges over time, this allows us to use a fixed effects model that controls for all time invariant differences between the judges, jumpers. So this is our this is what we do. This is the regression we run. Style points of judge J that he assigns to jumper I in competition T as function of whether this is a compatriot jumper or not, whether there is another compatriot judge in the panel, if he assigns points to some jumper and he knows that his compatriot is in the panel. We also have jumper fixed effects, judges fixed effects, and unique competitions fixed effects. And we also control for home advantage, length of the jump and its square term, wind, gate, compensation points. Now, actually, the first estimation is not exactly what I showed you. First estimation uses jump fixed effects. So on the level of each jump, which controls more or less for everything. We can see that if there is a the level of observation is evaluation of a single judge. So if a judge evaluates his compatriot jumper, he assigns about 0.1 style points more compared to the case when he evaluates non-compatriot jumper. By the way, in this specification, we cannot use compatriot in panel because compatriot in panel is perfectly constant over the same jump. So we can use compatriot in panel when we use when we don't use jump fixed effects. So here we use judge fixed effects, jumper fixed effects, and competition fixed effects. And we find that compatriot jumper is still significant and actually didn't change, but compatriot in panel is very not significant. Now, then let's talk a bit about home advantage, because I showed you previously that home events are not equally distributed between cases where we have compatriot in panel or not. So now we want to see whether there is some relationship between performance, measure of performance and performance at home. So we can see that jumping distance is positively associated with having a compatriot in panel. But when we control for home event, this relationship disappears, and this is not significantly different from 0. When we do jumping distance of top 30, we have a subsample of top 30 people. because then we kind of remove those who weren't very good or those who maybe did not complete their jump. So we find more or less the same story. And by the way, at home they perform jumpers perform significantly better than abroad, which may be driven by familiarity with facilities. And here we also so actually thank you, Shetil. I had a nice comment here. And actually here we follow in columns 5 and 6, we follow suggestions of previous papers. We exclude home events and we find the same story. There is no significant relationship between having a compatriot in panel and objective performance. So let's go back to our previous table. Let's continue from here. So now we, in column 3, we control for home advantage. And we can see that home advantage is significant. Having a compatriot in panel which tests for strategic voting actually has no effect. Having a compatriot in panel has no effect on judges' evaluation. But what does matter is actually that the judge evaluates his compatriot jumper. He assigns significantly more points. It's 0.1 points more, but you remember that within jump standard deviation is 0.3. So this coefficient is equal to as much as 1/3 of the standard deviation. So home event is whether you compete in your country, not in your town. So this is Carl asked. Okay. Now let's talk about overall fairness. Actually, it is clear that if we find nationalistic bias and if there is a truncation of extreme votes, then truncation by definition mitigates the nationalistic bias. So we test for that. We show it in the following specification: total style points as function of whether there is a compatriot in panel or not. And we control for home, for jumper fixed effects, competitions fixed effects, length of the jump, and wind and gate compensation points. So we show here, especially we do it 5 judges versus 3 judges. So, and here we do not control for home event. We can see that there is this positive association between having a compatriot in panel and having more style points. But when we compare between these two, we can see that the coefficient is much lower. When we control for home event, the magnitude of coefficient becomes 50% lower. Yeah, you can see it here. By the way, the difference between 0.99 and 0.62 is not significant. When we compare between 0.99 and 0.062, there is no the p-value is about 0.2, but we can see that the coefficient is about 40% lower, and here we can add to ongoing discussion about the usage of p-values, because many people say, okay, you don't have to go blind after p-value. You have to understand what you're doing. So we find that truncation reduces the bias by 40%, and yes, it's not, the difference is not significant, but we still say that truncation is pretty a good measure to reduce bias. And when we do total style points of top 30, so we again find that the coefficient becomes much smaller. By the way, here we use jumper fixed effects. In a robustness check, here you can say, this is significant, but in a robustness check, we are using jumper per season fixed effects. In our view, it's also a nice way to test things, because when we use jumper fixed effects, we assume that the ability is constant over 7 seasons. The ability of a jumper is constant over 7 seasons. I would say it's a strong assumption. But when we use jumper per season fixed effect, we only assume that the ability of a jumper constant over 1 season. It is still strong, but I guess it's much better than using jumper fixed effects over a period of 7 years. So when we do that, we still find more or less the same story. So yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, and standard errors are clustered. Thank you, Felix. Yeah, we clustered in a two-way things. Now, okay, so I'm approaching the end. It was like a conference presentation. So our results indicate that well-trained professional experts are prone to nationalistic bias, even almost 15 years after the bias was first illustrated in ski jumping. Remember the paper of Zitsevits in 2006? He took data from 2002 and found this effect, and we still find that the effect is there. So this suggests that the in-group favoritism is a very strong feature of human behavior, and that the ski jumping authorities should exert more efforts to mitigate it. Now, another point is that our results were obtained from fully observable sports competition. So everyone watched it, and judges are put their reputation at risk when they assign more points to their compatriots. But if we find such a thing in a fully observable setting, such an in-group favoritism may even be stronger in less transparent settings. On top of it, so let's say we have, I don't know, we want to hire somebody. If I know him, I can hire him. So because I may have this in-group favoritism. Okay, nobody watches me, I can hire somebody. But this favoritism may even more extreme during the times when the entire humanity faces difficulties such as coronavirus, where the immediate and natural desire is to protect in-group members, is to protect my town, is to protect my country. I care about, I don't know, Norway. I have many countries. I care about Norway. I care about Israel. I care about Switzerland. But we saw with this thing with Italy now that European countries did not really want to help straight away to Italy. And I found this funny but very sad caricature in the biggest Dutch newspaper, where countries from South Europe, they scream for help, and you see self-help. I hope it will not be the case anymore, but unfortunately we witness this in more extreme cases than just in ski jumping. So, but it seems that institutional settings that ski jumping apply in the form of truncation of extreme opinions, those things can be effective mechanism to mitigate such an in-group favoritism. At least this is what we found in ski jumping. Okay, and we call for future research to investigate nationalistic favoritism in other settings to bring to a higher awareness of this primitive human instinct that unfortunately has not disappeared yet. And I hope that if we publish this paper and there will be some media awareness of this, maybe this will help ski jumping authorities to mitigate the favoritism that they have now. So this is more or less it.
Hey, Alex, here is Felix. There's a question from Brad. If our variable distinguishes between the nationalistic bias or simply taste, so that, for example, Finnish judges just simply like the style of the Finnish jumpers more.
This is a good question. So let me think. If we have judges, but so this is actually taste for the jump. This is what you say, Brett, right? I have to think about it actually. So Finnish judges, they prefer a certain style, and therefore they will assign higher scores to Finnish jumpers, because those Finnish jumpers, they They have this style, right? Do I understand you correctly? Yeah, okay. But there are some rules. You have exact rules for each element that you assigned a certain number of points. So this can be true, but this is not in line with the rules. Okay, so, I think. But I don't think we really control for that, to be honest. Now, thank you. Enhancing and the magnitude of this bias is improving the prospect of the jumper in the competition standing. So first of all, I forgot to tell you that our estimates are very close to those that were found in Zitzewitz. He found his estimate was about 0.11, 0.14, depending on the specification. But we have like 8 times more data. But okay, we are more or less the same. So over the years, starting from 2002, the magnitude of the bias remained the same. This is 1. 2, here we show what truncation does to this bias. And how significant in improving the standing. Felix, what is it, 0.1? Is it enough to? Yeah, I understood. Yeah. What is the 0.1? How many points is that? We didn't run this simulation. Actually, this is a good point.
Well, so the style points like rise in the increment of 0.5. And in general, like we have, I think the style points contribute to the overall score. It's about like 40% of the overall score. So it's pretty high. It's not as high as the length of the jump. But
this magnitude of 0.1, how much is that in terms of points?
I'm not
because
sure.
They have this, I think, complicated formula, but but this is a good point. We might want, because this helps us to put our results into perspective, not only. Yeah, sorry. This is a good point because although we have this within standard deviation, which is 0.3, and our estimate is 1/3 of this standard deviation, which is pretty large, I would say. But yeah, but this is a good point. We might want to check it. Okay. So, James, I hope I pronounce it correctly. It would seem that losers are those jumpers who do not have a judge from their country on the panel at a given competition. Are there rules about how the judges are chosen? So they have these training sessions, and they have to be qualified to we have a section in the paper about it. So they have to have training sessions in the country, then they have to qualify to be international. So there is some path. How exactly they are chosen for each competition, this I don't know. Felix, do you have an answer?
Yes. So there's only the rule that the home event is allowed to have a judge, so a home judge, and the other one are chosen more or less randomly, I would say. But there are many countries who don't have a judge. So the United States, for example, or like smaller countries who only have like a few ski jumpers. And I think like one of the reasons is that they have like it takes at least about 2 years to become an international judge. So there's quite a high barrier to become a professional judge.
So Shetil is an expert in ski jumping, and actually he helped us a lot as well during the writing, because Israeli guys, they can't jump and they can't ski, so I had to ask Norwegian people. But he gives a nice answer that he guesses that 0.2 in general. So it's half of this margin. This is what we find. But we may check it. By the way, I have a question to you. The overall fairness, how do you find those results that we don't find here a significant effect, but we still say that well, there is a dramatic reduction in the bias? Do you buy this? Because I think this is a dramatic reduction in the bias, although not significant, statistically speaking. What do you think about it? Okay. Oh, thank you. We have experts here in ski jumping. Officials have a career path to become. Yeah, I agree with you, Brad. I agree with you. But the intuition of this 0.1, one thing that I want to tell. When we have total style points that are 0.1 points higher when there is a compatriot in panel compared to where there is no compatriot in panel, this is exactly the results of, this is exactly this result. Because we have, this is exactly this result, because a single compatriot, a single judge assigns close to 0.1 points more. So when we aggregate everything, we still have to find 0.1 points more. But probably in aggregation, something happened with the statistically speaking, something happened there. But the result makes sense when I compare between individual estimation, individual evaluation, and overall evaluation. So this is. Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly. We are saying this is indicative. This is, it's not significant, but we have a discussion about significance level, and now the American Association, American Statistical Association, they say that, look, you don't have to be refugee of these p-values. You have to understand what you're doing and what are the results. So any additional comments? Because this was really nice to have such a presentation and all those comments to understand whether we are drunk or not, whether we understand what we are doing. I hope we did. And I hope we will understand that having a nationalistic bias is not a good thing. James, you are with us?
Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting you, aren't I?
Wait a moment. There is.
I'll keep quiet.
Would just storage quotient in comparison with the NBA referee paper is same? I think. Yeah, I agree. We just give it as. I still. First of all, I agree. Second of all, I think that to have a media attention toward problems usually helpful, whether this is racial bias or a nationalistic bias. Those biases, we obviously do not agree to have it. And if there will, and by the way, another thing, we cite a very recent paper from PNAS that negative media attention usually helps much more than positive one. So maybe Felix, can you answer Tunde?
I'm actually not sure. We can take a look, but I haven't done it yet. But it should be very similar because with the wind and gate compensation points, the setting remains pretty much the same, and the jumping distance is converted to a point value, so it's always in relation to the size of the hill, so it should be very similar.
The wind data are pretty exogenous. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Maybe more. Actually, we can use it. So to have like but first of all, it's not associated with our treatment, which is good. And yeah, well, yeah, we have to think about it. This is a good point. Yeah, I don't know either how. Yeah, this is a good point. Actually, this could be some good maybe IV for something, because this is really exogenous. Yeah. But now what remains is to ask a good question. We have a good IV now. We have to think about it. This is really a good IV. Okay. In the journals today, good IV seems to be preferred to good. Unfortunately. And unfortunately, you're right. But you can change it. You are one of the editors, you know. Yeah, good question. I guess I prefer a good question.
Okay, shall we wrap up? Any final questions, maybe?
So, guys, thank you so much for a very nice evening. I really enjoyed, and thank you, James, again for organizing all these things, and thank you for very good comments.
Well, thank you very much, Alex, for delivering the presentation. It's been fascinating talk, lots of good discussion, and flag up that we won't be doing this next Friday, because next Friday is Good Friday, but we'll be back the following Friday after that with the next talk. And if you do want to give one of the Roses talks in May or June, please do get in touch and let me know. There's a poll out. You can choose any particular Friday in that time. So thank you very much, everybody. Real pleasure. Good to see many of you. Good to see your comments. And look forward to the next time.
Thank you, and keep safe and healthy.
Yep, keep safe. Stay safe. Bye-bye.